What's up, guys and gals, and welcome back to the Nerd Castle for the next Splatterchat. This is number 3. Alright, today we're going to be sitting down and talking a little bit about this subject. So I know the last couple were very, very pointed. They actually had like a topic that they were on. This one does too, although this one's going to be a little bit different. This one's going to be a little bit slower. This one's going to be a little bit more, like, I guess, words of encouragement, essentially. And so I find that in my position here on YouTube, whether, you know, as you get more popular on YouTube or as you start to develop an audience or anything like that, people start to reach out to you. And you start getting emails from people that seem to be very, very desperate or in a bad way or having a hard time in life. And I get these letters pretty frequently. It happens probably on the monthly, I would say, from just like a person that you can really tell that they're at the end of their rope. And I know you can tell by the title of this video. It says right there, it's like, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna get better. Everything's gonna be alright. It gets better, you know? Whatever title I decided to choose for this video log, you can already tell that this is gonna be one of those more serious talks. And indeed, while I want this series to be more about industry stuff and things like that, I feel like if a person has an opportunity to reach out and actually make contact with somebody and be like, you're gonna be alright when they're suffering, I feel like you have a moral responsibility to do so. So if you got somebody in your life like that who's, you know, reaching out and desperately is hurting it, they're, you know, desperately looking for somebody to help them out, they're hurting right now, please be that person for somebody. I'm gonna try and do a little bit of something like that right now, which obviously, given the nature of my work here, is a little bit difficult. I'm remote. I'm kind of on my own. This is over the internet. It's hard sometimes to match up the perspective between the way people see me and I see them and stuff like that. But I'm gonna get straight to the point here. Now, we tend to define our lives a bit by the hills and valleys, the mountains and valleys, in fact, because those things tend to be so prominent in our lives. As we go about our day, we get to the lowest of lows, and at different points in our lives, we might be at the highest of highs. It really sort of depends. It also depends on the legality of the highest of highs. But keeping, I'm gonna try and make this at least a little bit humorous, but at the same time, I get letters from people sometimes who appear to be low down in those valleys, and because those things are so prominent, nobody really remembers the even stuff. The stuff in between is very, very easily forgettable for most people. Like, you can have 20 days just maintaining the status quo, nothing terrible happens, but nothing really amazing happens either, and you just like brain wipe that. But if you have like one of those monolithic great things that happens, you always remember those, and the really, really terrible shit, we remember that too. And if you start getting like a stream of terrible stuff, you know, you're down in the bottom of the valley over and over and over again, it can start to eat at you, and it can start to have a little bit of an emotional pull on a person. And so anyways, I've gotten an email this week from somebody who was definitely in one of those low places. I'm not going to name names, but I'm going to talk about the situation, and I'm going to discuss, you know, the fact that it may not be as bad as it seems right now, or it may be that bad, but I promise it'll get better. And so anyways, I got an email from somebody talking about basically everything in their life seems to be really, really just sucking right now, and there's no real other way to put it. Like, life is sucking shit. As far as I could tell, they're kind of at that age where they're probably like 14, 15, 16 in there somewhere, and they said that their home life is not working out. You know, their parents are either overly harsh or maybe somewhat like verbally abusive or something along those lines. Basically, they're not getting the support at home that they need, and then when they're going to school and they're up in class, they're getting picked on, they're getting put down, they're getting bullied. They may not have a whole lot of friends. They may not have the social construct or like that social spider web that you can climb up to get yourself out of the nasty muck. And because of that, it's caused their brain to go to some dark places. It's caused their mind and their attitude to go to some dark places. And they were talking about how they were contemplating taking like finalizing, like a real, you know, a real final solution to that situation. Essentially, they're talking about ending their life because things aren't looking good right now, and from where they're at, they can't see it getting any better. And so the first thing that I would say is it's all right to feel that way. Everybody feels shitty some of the time. Everybody's life is shitty at some point or another. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Michael Jordan or if you're the guy that cleans up the trash at the side of the road. Everybody goes through shitty periods in their life, and the real terrible thing about those shitty periods is talking about the hills and valleys metaphor or the simile or whatever else. And see, every time I start a video log, I promise you, every time I start doing any kind of work, 1,000 people are going to text me. 1,000 people. My phone's just going to be like, ding, 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 ding. Nature of being a YouTuber. Nature of being a YouTuber. And you know, I've been there. And so when you're down in that valley talking about that metaphor, when you're down in the valley, the funny thing about valleys is that when you look around yourself, all you can see is things rising up. You know, you're stuck down at the bottom and you see all these people up on the mountains and up on the hills and you're just like, why this shit can't this happen to me? What the fuck? You know, and you're really, really upset about it. And you'll pardon my language here, but I'm going to try and be a lot realer in these splatter chats than normally. Like, normally I try to keep that to a minimum when I'm doing like my normal videos. I try to keep it family friendly. But sometimes I definitely think that there is a call for foul language, and there's a call. It makes things, you know, I feel like if you can accent it a little bit, you can definitely express the fact that things are kind of sucky. And from that position, you see all these people doing well. It's easy to become jealous. It's easy to start looking at yourself and being like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I stuck down in this low right now while everybody else appears to be on the moving up, and they have all these friends and they have all these things going on and they might be making money or they might be doing this, that, or the other. It's natural. And the first thing that I really wanted to express here is that, you know, reaching out, you know who you are. I'm not naming names, but you know who you are, and hopefully you see this video log. The first thing that you did was actually great. You reached out and you told somebody, I'm not okay. Because as a culture, I really do think that we have a problem, especially among men, especially among dudes. I'm like the perfect example of this. It's very, very difficult to admit that we're not okay. Because society has that idea of masculinity, and you're supposed to be stoic, and it's supposed to be water off the side of the mountain. But the thing about the water off the side of the mountain is that the water eventually starts to form cracks, and it starts to dig out rivers and stuff like that into the mountain if you don't address it. And so, you know, you've done the right thing. You've reached out and you've said, I'm not okay, and I need help. And that's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing. So I applaud you on that. And that being said, I think that the number one thing that I would try to impress upon you during the course of this talk is that it's gonna be okay, and that it's gonna get better. I'm not the oldest person, I'm not the wisest person. In fact, I don't think I've really gleaned that much wisdom from life. But having been in the place where you're at right now, you know, I just went through deaths in the family. I've gone through a series of like hard times over the last 3 or 4 months, and I'm coming out of it now. You know, I'm starting to climb out of the edge. And if I can encourage you, it's that as I get older, I notice that anytime you're in one of these situations where you're just so far down and you just feel like you can't claw your way out, and it just feels like there's a blanket on your mentality. It feels like there's just this heavy, nasty, wet wool blanket just sitting on top of your demeanor and the way that you interact and the way that you try to be positive. It almost feels impossible. You know, it's like a rocket trying to blast off through, you know, yet again. It's like a rocket trying to blast off through a mountain. It's not going to work. You feel like you're going to crash and you're not going to make it. But oftentimes that mountain is actually just clouds, and from your position, it just seems so much more threatening than it actually is. And so I'm going to try and take this in order and kind of talk about things in such a way that we hit them as the points were raised. And so the first thing that was brought up is your home life and your school life. Well, I mean, it really kind of sucks. I don't have a lot of advice for you when it comes to your home life. I mean, if it is truly abusive, think about talking to a counselor, thinking about talking to somebody who can actually help you with that situation, somebody who's in a position of authority to help get you out of that situation. If it actually is truly unbearable and physically abusive or really, really bad, you got to help yourself. You got to talk to somebody who's got the power to help you, because as a minor, I don't know what country you're from or where you're at. As a minor, you are essentially the property of your parents. Like, that's really what it comes down to, is that you're expected to live there and you're expected to put up with it. And it's a bit of a sad thing. And if you're going through stuff at home, you're going to have to take steps in order to rectify that, or otherwise just be like, I won't be treated like that. I'm assuming that you're starting to get to the age now where you're approaching adulthood. And so cultivating some self-confidence, I know, because everybody's getting down on you right now, including the people who are supposed to support you the most. That's the saddest part, is that your parents are supposed to have your back no matter what. Your parents are supposed to be there, but we don't all get lucky. We don't all get the parents that we deserve, and that's just the nature of the lottery of life. And so it sucks that you're having to go through that, because more than anything else, parents should always have your back. But since they don't, and you're in a really, really dark place right now, the ultimate piece of advice that I would give you is wait it out. And that's going to be the advice that I would give you for either of your situations, both at school and at home. I would first encourage you to talk to somebody about it. Talk to a counselor, talk to somebody that's in a position of authority who can help you out with these things, or help shield you at least a little bit. And then ultimately, this is going to be a game of time. Now, in an attempt to somewhat create, I guess, some common ground, so that you don't think that I'm just some asshole trying to give you advice, I'm going to talk a little bit about my time. Like middle school, let's just get to the point here. I went to middle school, I went to high school just like everybody else, and frankly, that shit sucks. There's nothing you can really do about it. It's a phase of your life that you have to move through, and you do your best to make positive with it. Junior high, in my opinion, was far, far worse than high school. Like, junior high was just a nightmare. And coming from my perspective, I was always small growing up. My grandmother's like 4'8". My mom is like 4'9". My dad is 5'11", but it doesn't matter because when you bring hobbits into the bloodline, it takes a lot to kind of conquer that and be like tall and robust. And so I was a small kid, such to the fact that they thought that I might have a growth disorder or something when I was in junior high, like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I think I was somewhere in the realm of like, I was barely over 4 foot. Like, I was really, really small at that age. I can recall going on trips when I was in junior high to like theme parks and stuff like that, and I couldn't ride rides because I was too short. I wasn't allowed to ride rides, and everybody else would. And being small, it makes you easy to victimize. Aside from that, I was also homeschooled for a vast majority of my life. And when I got dropped back into the school system, it was kind of like somebody in isolation being dropped into the general population of a prison. I was very sheltered. I was brought up very religious. I had no world experience whatsoever. And so all of a sudden, overnight, I'm dropped into this environment where everybody else is like smoking, drinking, experimenting with sex and everything else. And this is like in 8th grade. These are like young kids playing around with this kind of stuff, like things that they really should not be messing around with at that age. And you just don't know how to deal with it because the world perspective is so much different than everything you thought. Now, I did have friends and stuff like that when I was that age. I was part of homeschool groups and stuff like that, but everybody else that I was associated with had the exact same experience that I did. They were all homeschooled as well, and so they had never been exposed to those things either, and so the support system was very, very thin. The fact that I was sheltered and the fact that I was small made me very, very easy to victimize, make fun of, and bully at that age. And so yeah, in junior high, I got my ass kicked frequently. If I got a nickel for every time I lost my lunch money, it was a little rough. It was the 90s, you know, like nerd culture I don't think was an accepted thing yet. Kids were still, you know, there was nerds and there was people who were jocks and there was kind of these different social groups. Now, we're lucky in the fact that nowadays things are much more accepted. I haven't been to school in a long time. I mean, I may have a completely different perspective of it just because I've gotten older, but it felt like you got picked on a lot. Like, I would never dream of wearing a Star Wars shirt in the 90s because that was just like a recipe to get somebody's toe cap shoved up into your, you know, shoved up into your colon. It just is what it is. That's the way that it worked back then. And so, the first thing, as I would say, I've been there. I know what it feels like, and I know how you bring that baggage home with you. Like, when you're getting your ass kicked on a daily basis, when you're getting roughed up, and people are just putting you down constantly, it's hard to feel like you can fly. It really sincerely is, because you constantly got people clipping your pin feathers and just making you feel like you're a piece of shit, even though you aren't. And the first thing you have to realize is the people that do that stuff have their own issues that they're trying to sort out, and they're doing it in an unconstructive way. They're doing it in a really kind of explosive way that damages other people, but bear in mind that they might be going through stuff too. I'll give you a brief story about a guy I knew in high school. I knew a guy in high school that was constantly bullying people. He's just an asshole, and he was bigger than everybody else, and there was really nothing you could do about it. He was constantly picking on kids, like the special needs kids. He was just a downright just piece of shit. Like, there's really no way to describe this guy than that, like a real sociopath bastard. It turns out down the line, 10, 20 years later, I find out just through casual conversation that when he would go home every day, he was getting molested by a family member. And that's that, like. And so he, having a young mind of like 15 or 16 years old, had no idea how to deal with that kind of victimization. And so he vented that frustration by victimizing other people. And I'm not saying that to justify what he did. What he did in school was terrible. I can recall stories about this guy where when you think back on it, you're just like, holy shit, man, how did this guy not get knifed? You know what I mean? But it helps give you some idea that when you're going through stuff and you're getting picked on, maybe the people that are picking on you are also being victimized in horrible ways. And nowadays, that guy is an upstanding citizen. He goes to Africa, he builds churches, he builds schools, he does all kinds of stuff trying to make up for the fact that he was a horrible person back in the day, and also he's put his baggage behind him in some respects. He's learned to live with it, if nothing else, and he's decided to never be a party to that kind of victimization again. And that leads me into my next point, is that as you go through life and as you get older, people are going to fall away and people are going to change. What seems like a really, really big deal right now, I can remember being really upset when I got home from school one day, and my mom and my dad knew what was going on at school, and they sat me down and they were like, you know, we know it seems like this is your life right now, because in some respects it is, but this is a very, very short period of your life. Junior high into high school, that's 6 years of your life. If you live to be 80 years old, think of how small of a fraction of your life that's going to be, and how little that's going to impact you if you decide to do the right thing and just be like, well, someday it'll be over, and I'm not going to let this affect me as a human being. I'm not going to let this make me bitter. I'm not going to let this make me nasty. I'm not going to let this make me a shitty human being. Ultimately, don't let bad people have control of who you are. If they're going to treat you shitty, have self-confidence and be like, hey, I'm not going to take that shit from you. And yes, you might get an ass whipping for it, but eventually people around are going to notice and be like, he's a really nice guy. And they're going to turn on that person who's victimizing you. I promise you, I've seen it happen before. And if it doesn't, either way, you ride out the shot clock and you're done with high school and junior high soon enough. If you're 16 years old, you are almost there. You're almost done. I remember when I was in high school, there was a kid who was like 17 who decided to take his own life because he felt like there was never going to be anything for him because he's being picked on and victimized. And to me, that seems so sad because you were so close. You were almost there. And as you get older, as I was saying, to continue my line of thought there, I tend to jump around a lot. You're so close. And when you turn 18 and you start to make your own money and you start to cultivate your own friend groups and you start to push away the shitty influences and bring in the positive ones, the people that enable you and make you better, and you start to kick loose the people that hold you back and make you worse, it gets so much easier. It gets so much easier. I was in a lucky situation where after getting picked on a lot in junior high, my old man taught me how to box, and I had a really great dad who stood up for me, and he was very frank about it. He's like, I can't go to the school and fix this for you, because then that's just going to make you a mama's boy. And I don't say that in a disparaging way. It's just that if I go to school and I handle this, it's going to make the bullying worse for you. And so I remember distinctly my dad brought home free weights and he taught me how to box, and going back into high school, I had gained a great deal of self-confidence through my personal physical health, and I began standing up for myself. I got my growth spurt when I was in my late freshman year, and while I ended up only being like 5'7", still, that's way better than being like 4'3". Like, and you start to, I learned to box, I got a lot stronger, I started to develop a physique that made me a little bit more imposing, and I didn't use that against other people. It was a deterrent, it was kind of those prison rules, and I was very, very fortunate to have a dad who was like that. But if, you were unlucky and you didn't get the dad lottery like that, like I said earlier, it's gonna be over soon. And once you make your own money and you move out and you have your own place and you have your own friend groups, you get to start to pick who gets to be around you, including your parents. And the people that treated you shitty, you can just eliminate them from your life, and it will get better. I can tell you 100% that even though everybody goes through struggles and everybody goes through problems, as you get older and you generate wisdom and you start to get your own money, you start to get your own things in your own space and your own property and your own friends, your girlfriend, whatever, your boyfriend, whoever, these things seem to fall away. And just like you mature as you get older, the people you meet in your life will mature as well. I've had the benefit of meeting a lot of the people from my high school days that were just total dicks back then, and it's always interesting to me how later on in life you meet with these people and they've normalized incredibly, because you have to. You can't be a bully piece of shit when you're in the workplace, because you're an HR nightmare waiting to happen. You will get rolled out on, and somebody will clamp down on that unless you are just surrounded by sycophants and just the worst type of people. And in that case, it's time to look for a new line of work or work for a new company or something like that. Get yourself out of that negative environment so you can be happy, because ultimately that's what we have to do in our lives. Is we have to look out for our happiness and the happiness of people around us. And honestly, as I was saying, people do mature on both sides of the fence. The people that did bad things, they almost always become better. And the people that suffered the bad things, you get better too. Cultivate your self-confidence. Let yourself know that they don't dictate who you are on a fundamental level. And I know it's difficult. Like I said, the rain on the mountain does make cracks and it does make scars. But they don't dictate who you are. They don't tell you who you get to be in life and what you get to affect and what goodness you get to do and what passions you get to pursue and the things that make you you. And I can tell from the tone of your email that you're definitely one of those phases right now where the scars are getting deep and they're starting to hurt. And these are the times that are going to make you who you are later. Whether you choose to persevere and defeat this, or whether you choose to succumb and allow people to form you like Play-Doh into what they want you to be, it's your call. But ultimately, I do think you have it in you, and if nobody else is standing up for you right now, I'm telling you, from me to you, Splattercat to you, unnamed viewer that I don't want to name because I don't want to dox anybody or cause any problems, I've got your back. I do, 100%. I know you can do this, and I know you're going to be okay, and I know things are going to get better for you. You just got, in the worst case, write it out, and in the best case, just start cultivating your self-confidence, telling yourself every single day when you wake up that I am worth it. Fuck those guys. They don't get to tell me who I am. Fuck them. They don't get to squash my passions. Fuck them. They can make fun of me all they want. Water off a duck's back. I'm going to keep doing me regardless, because I think that a passion for oneself, as a little precarious wording there, a passion for oneself, Had a passion for oneself all the time when I was that age. No. But a passion for oneself is something that if you cultivate it young, nothing will be able to hold you back. And I promise, people are going to change. Things are going to get better. Your life is going to completely rearrange. It's ridiculously different now. When I was 18 years old, I could not have imagined all the things I was going to get up to by my early 30s, which is where I'm at like right now. It's a very strange thing to think back on, because back then I knew I wanted to do this, this, and this, and if these things didn't happen, I was going to die. I just couldn't live without them. And it's funny, I never had a passion for being a YouTuber. When I was 18 or 19, never was a thought that I was ever going to be doing this on the internet playing video games every day. I thought I was going to be some kind of scientist, maybe some kind of musician. I didn't really know. I was just playing it out at the time. And the weird twists and turns that life takes will surprise you. And I promise that once you get to kind of that oasis in the middle of the desert, it'll be so satisfying looking back at all those trials that really tried to wear you down and break you apart over the course of your life. I promise you'll look back and you'll be like, man, I was so close to giving up back then, but I'm so glad that I didn't. So hang in there. Talk to a counselor, talk to a friend, talk to somebody that is receptive, and we'll just listen and be like, yeah, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry you're feeling that way, but you know it's going to be okay, you know? Because those people do exist. There are people that will reach out to help. Some people are just naturally helpers. Like Mr. Rogers said, sometimes you just got to look out for the helpers, and that's all that you can do. I sincerely hope that you find peace. I really, really hope that you don't do anything drastic. I hope that this video has helped, because, you know, I'm really trying my best here. I'm not equipped for this situation. I'm not entirely sure what to say to somebody that will fix this, because I know how I was at that age. And when I was younger, I didn't want advice from anybody. I thought I knew how shit worked, and I was like, fuck that, I'll be fine. I got this covered. Fuck it, I already know how the world works. And so I know sometimes that can cloud your judgment a little bit, and that's how it was for me. It was a tremendous amount of hubris for me. But hang in there. I promise, hang in there. It'll get better. It'll get better. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this video log. I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. And if you're in a similar situation to the person who emailed me, I hope that this is something that was at least a little bit, somewhat of a salve for the burn for you too. I don't know. I tried my hardest with it, so I hope that it helped out. I don't really know what else to say. I wish that I could physically reach out and help you, but it's one of those things where we're separated by the internet. So I did what I could with the tools that I had. All right. I will see you all later. Hang in there, everybody, and I'll see you next week for our next Splatter Chat. All right. Bye, everybody.